Welcome into another episode of the PFF NFL show. A very special episode. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman and the big boss man, our CEO, Cris Collinsworth, is in the house. Cris, I'm so excited to hear your first and only mock draft for this year. Also because I'm so sick of hearing Dalton's draft takes. He's so sick of hearing my draft takes. We get a fresh perspective now on the 2025 NFL draft.
You guys are just so happy that you will no longer have the worst draft picks in the history of the world. What do they say on the internet? It's like the minute anybody comes out with a mock draft, that's the worst, that's the dumbest. Mine will carry that title all the way through. But, you know, I was sitting there and we were talking about it, and to me, this is a work day, right? I'm getting ready for the draft show next week, and I'll be with you guys, and we'll have some fun. But, you know, so, okay, I've seen 50 of the players or so it's not like I have the depth of knowledge you guys do. But I'll be up to 70, 75 by the time we get to the show. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in and pick their brains and see what they have. And I was like, let's just put it on the air. What the heck? What's the worst that could happen? So I know this is going to be hopefully the worst that this is. And there's a lot of information that'll come out in the next week, and we'll figure out all that. But this is a working day. This is what we do at PFF. On Mondays before a Sunday night football game, I come in and I debrief all you guys and I suck all the information out of you, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. So we're just going to have some fun. You guys can tell me when I'm out of my mind. That's good. That's all right. I can do it. But I listen to you guys all the time. You do a fabulous job. You're all over it. College football, NFL football, you're all over it. So can't wait to get started.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, as far as it being the best or the worst mock draft, it feels like after the first couple picks anyway, it's as unpredictable a draft as we've had in a while, right? The lack of quarterbacks, the more defensive talent that we had last year when the first 14 picks were offensive guys, right? We really knew who the superstars were. And I think that's what this really is understanding that every team, except for maybe the top 2 or 3, there's 3 or 4 different ways they could go about it, right? They have several holes to improve on their team. Even the playoff teams, when you talk about having multiple needs, 2 or 3, it's really an exercise in hypotheticals, right? And the different ways you can improve your team. And one thing that I like looking at too is how does that first round pick set up teams on day 2 and on day 3? What does the depth of this draft look like when we talk about a strong defensive line class? Could a team wait on that? Could a team wait for a stronger running back class, a deep running back class, and take that guy on day 2 or 3 instead of in round 1? So I think to me that's the most fascinating part is how do teams really structure their entire draft strategy off of the first round pick?
I tell you, just as a way to start this conversation, it's exactly how I look at it. It's like, man, I like this wide receiver class, but I don't love one over the other that much. The defensive tackles, you know, I think they're 4 deep that I would feel good about. The edge players, I think there's 6 or 7 deep that I would feel good about, right? And then you get into the positional stuff about, okay, you know, how many classes of offensive linemen are going to come along? But a couple of those guys are hurt and they're coming off injuries. And do you end up going, you know, I'm going to do that. Same thing with the cornerback class. Like if there were no injuries, you go, yeah, I don't care where I pick them, but there are. So now what do you do with this thing? So there are certain positions you love, there are certain players, but to me, the big news, at least as I looked at it, was I like the first 3 players. I think everybody's going to be pretty much the same on them. But then if I had pick 4 through 32, I wouldn't really care. I mean, I don't feel like, to me, this draft kind of does this, and then it goes down, where usually it just kind of gradually fades down. Like, I think there's a pretty good dip there, but not that they aren't good players. I mean, they're good players. I just think there's 3 of them that have a chance to be something special. And then after that, you're coming down a notch, but it's kind of flat lines all the way through the end of the first round, at least as I was looking at it. So
no, I agree. I think you have a lot of that B to B plus starting caliber talent instead of the superstars. I think you mentioned it, 3 or 4 guys that are really separated at the very top, but you're talking about maybe a team takes the quantity approach and goes, I think about a team like the Carolina Panthers, right, where we need a lot of starting caliber players, especially on defense. Let's stack up the quantity of picks and go get them. I think it's a very good draft for that with the depth of it.
So let's dive in to the great Cris Collinsworth's first mock draft using the beautiful PFF mock draft simulator. It's available to you guys.
Thank God for that thing.
Oh, it's incredible.
Nobody gets through a draft without this thing anymore.
Not even Kyler Murray. Recently, Kyler Murray in an interview said, hey, I do a lot of mock drafts using the PFF mock draft simulator. So Kyler Murray even uses that mock draft simulator. You can do a full 7 rounds if you want to with that mock draft simulator. You can do some trades. And spoiler alert, Chris has a very spicy trade coming in the top 10 we'll get into in just a second. But again, available at pff.com. So Chris, number 1 overall, Tennessee Titans are on the clock. Where are they going with this pick?
Yeah, I like Cam Ward. I did from the beginning. I think that he does a lot of things that I really liked. He showed some nice touch on the ball and some of the layering kind of throws. He would step up into the line of scrimmage and not look to run.
Yeah.
He would look to throw. He would, I think if I were coaching him on anything, it would be, and he's a powerful runner too, but it would be as many plays as he can make sort of on the move and out of the pocket. Like if he would make an equal number of plays just throwing on time to help his offensive line, to slow them down. The one thing about the college game is that these guys are pretty good. They're better athletes than the guys rushing them as a general rule. That's not true at the next level. And so at some point you have to give your offensive line a few plays off, just catch it, throw it, catch it, throw it. Just slow them down a little bit, wear them out. There's nothing wrong with the first 3 plays of every drive. Let those crazy defensive linemen come off the ball and get a little tired, right? So I think he could do that a little bit better. But I do believe that he's a possible star in this league, and they're desperate for a quarterback. They've got to make that move. And there really, to me, is only one that I really, really feel good about going into this draft. And honestly, if he wasn't a quarterback, I'm not sure that Cam Ward would be that high on my board anyway. But, when you're talking about the quarterback position, you're going to reach, you're going to take a few chances, and I think he's a deserving number 1.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's a deserving number 1. You have the Titans who were last in the league in passing grade last year. Obviously, they can't sustain themselves with Will Levis and whatever else they were working with at quarterback. And with Cam, I think you hit the 2 things on the head with him. Is the word that comes to mind with me is fearless. He's absolutely fearless. I think in the same way that you see some of the great quarterbacks are willing to throw into tight windows, willing to improvise, willing to do whatever it takes to win, especially on 3rd down and in the 4th quarter. We saw so many comeback victories this year at Miami. Fearless is the word, and I love that you brought up the flaw of, hey, sometimes you have to reel it in a little bit. He is kind of a gunslinger. I think even stylistically, you could say some of the same things about a Caleb Williams. I see a little bit of Caleb Williams in Cam Ward, especially late in the play. He got better with it this year at Miami, but at Washington State, even going back to Incarnate Word, was very much a gunslinger late in plays and would try to extend them too much. When he throws in rhythm, he's confident with those throws within 2.5 seconds. It looks fantastic. You're right. He just has to do it more often.
But Patrick Mahomes was the same way coming out of college. I mean, I can remember watching him and going, damn, there's a lot of talent here. I don't know if he can reel it in. I was like, I guess he reeled it in a little bit, But it's also that mentality that makes you think that, hey, there is something on top of it, which is what makes Shedeur Sanders. I've never evaluated a pick like him because I think he's just the opposite. Like he should only live within that 2.5 seconds because he's really good at that. But when he gets out and starts freelancing and, you think, oh, it's Deion's kid and he's going to run 4.4, but that's not who he is. He's a pocket, quick read, deliver the football accurately kind of guy. I just don't know how much you can trust him to play at the NFL level like that because I kind of get the feeling that he likes that moving around, and so that's my concern with him.
Yeah, so Cam Ward, number 1 overall, going to the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward, the highest graded quarterback in college football this past year. Tennessee desperately needs a quarterback. Seems like they're pretty locked in on Cam Ward at number 1. Chris, the draft starts at number 2, though. Cleveland Browns, nobody knows what they're going to do with that 2nd overall pick. What do you think they should do at number 2?
Well, I keep looking at it. If you have Myles Garrett and you have Abdul Carter, you've got, scare the hell out of every quarterback around, right? If you have a lead. But they don't have anybody to put any points on the board. And so they're not going to have a lead. And so are pass rushers really that valuable if you can't score? So at least if I have Travis Hunter, maybe one day my offense is great and I get to flip him to the defensive side. I personally think that he's a better corner than he is a receiver, but only by a little bit. I really believe he can be a star receiver in this game, and sounds like that's what he's really pushing to try to get teams to consider him as. And why not? Receivers are making $40 million and corners are not. So and I understand that, but I was blown away by him as a corner, and I thought the one thing about him on offense was that he didn't always really engage in blocking. I thought that maybe that was probably the time he took off because he was playing so many plays. But when you watch him as a corner, soft is far from what you would consider him to be. I mean, he hits. He comes up there and he delivers blows, and I think he's just a natural guy who understands, and I've heard you guys talk about this, and it's really true. You can see he knows the route combinations. If these two guys are going in, this guy's going over the top, or he's going, if he's playing off, he sees all that stuff, and he's not going to drop anything. We know that. But I think you'll see him start as I would do it the other way. I would play him as a corner, and I would filter him in at receiver because I think it's easier to do that. But I think Cleveland is going to give him a chance to play receiver, and we'll see where it goes.
As someone who's played in the NFL, how difficult do you think it would be for a guy like him to play both ways in the NFL?
Tough. It'll be tough because there's so much detail to everything that's going on. I mean, so you could foresee him as a receiver playing a lot in the middle of the field. Well, there's a lot of hot reads. There's a lot of blitz pickups. There's a lot of adjustments that you have to know and spend a lot of time with your quarterback on to do that. And at the same time, in Cleveland, we know that they're going to have a lot of crazy things on defense too, right? And so it's hard. 17 games is 17 games. That is a lot to be playing both ways, and you're getting 1 week off in the middle of that. Now, this kid is phenomenal. He's phenomenal. He deserves all the attention that he gets. I think he's a slightly better corner, but just because it's Cleveland and they really don't need that other pass rusher, and I don't think it comes in play quite as soon, in a coin flip, I would take Hunter.
Yeah, it's tough, and I think that's why he's one of the most fascinating draft cases, because even the opinions within NFL circles are different, right? We heard Titans GM Mike Borgonzi kind of have that same opinion, where corner first, maybe moonlight at receiver, but the Browns GM Andrew Berry said, look, we view him as a receiver first, and maybe we'll figure out the two-way thing. And Travis is of the mind that I want to try it both ways. I want to try to do something that's never been done before. I'm with you. I think it's going to depend on these teams' opinion. He has the ability to be the best corner in the entire league. I think the ball skills are almost unprecedented, obviously, with him being an elite receiver in college football. But, even Trevor Sikkema's mentioned that he might even like him better in zone coverage than man coverage. And he's already really good in man coverage. He was the only corner in the country last year that was ranked in the top 10 in man coverage grade and zone coverage grade because his eyes are so good and his jumps to the football and his reads are so good. So it's tough. The good thing for the Browns with that pick is they have major needs at both spots. The cornerback play was not great last year. The receiver play, other than Jerry Jeudy, was not great. So whether they use them at one or the other or both, they're going to help the football team.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, number 3 overall, Travis Hunter is off the board, the Heisman Trophy winner. New York Giants here on the clock. Chris, do you think they're going to go with a quarterback here, or do they go with Abdelkader or someone else?
I don't, and the reasons are probably more personal. When you've got a coach and a GM sitting there on a 1-year deal and you got to win, are you really ready to plug in a quarterback and go, let's go get him, Tiger? I just don't think that is possible. And so it might actually hurt the Giants that they try to do something to win immediately, instead of building for the future. You can make an argument maybe they should be building out the offensive line. But I do think it settles in here. Now, if I'm the Giants and I can trade out of that pick, in a heartbeat. I love Abdul-Carter, and they're going to be the obvious choice here. Not because there is a tremendous need, but because he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
And you just don't pass on phenomenal players. And I feel like that after pick number 3 is where the plateau hits, and there is a bit of a drop down, and then there's sort of that flat line after that. But Abdul-Carter, Micah Parsons. That's what he looks like. Yeah, I don't know how the hell you get like you literally think you're watching tape from 4 years ago or whenever it was, but he can do it all. He's a tremendous talent, and it feels easy that I would, if I were the Giants, I'd do it.
I mean, that's the best player available, right? And this so often where we do so much overthinking, what does this team need? Where are they trying to fill? What's their biggest need? And sometimes you just get a special football player. If he can have that similar impact to what Micah Parsons has had in Dallas, you figure out the Kayvon Thibodeau situation later. You figure out the rest of your defensive line, the rest of your defense, your quarterback situation, maybe at the top of the second round. But I get the argument of this guy is so special, we just can't pass him. We don't care. He's going to make our football team better regardless of what we already have. And Carter, you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it, 3 or 4 guys that stand above the rest. He's certainly one of them. I would argue he's the second best player behind Hunter. And for him to go here, look, you're making the talent play and you figure out the quarterback situation. And you have Russell Wilson. And if they feel like, hey, we can win enough games with Russell Wilson to save our jobs, then the long-term health of the organization might be better with Abdul Carter.
Maybe they get Arch Manning next year. Another Manning in Giant Blue maybe next year. Maybe that's what they do next year.
We got a long way. Well, I guess we already sort of mocked some of the 26 guys, but man, we got a long way to go before that.
It is interesting though. Russell Wilson probably gets you to worst case scenario 5, 6, 7 wins, something like that, which takes you out of the top of it.
Yeah.
It's like how many teams? Pittsburgh seems like they're in that drier cycle too, that they're always winning enough games to never get one of those top quarterback kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, number 4 overall, New England Patriots. They need to support Drake May as much as possible. Chris, what are you doing here?
Yeah, and I know where we're going with this with a lot, but I'm going to go with Membo here. I just a tackle out of Missouri. I just feel like that athletically, this is a guy that could be anything. He just has the feet and the athletic ability to stay in front of people. I know that there's going to be debate on that and who else might fit into that position, and it's not who the newspapers are saying that they're going to take. But if it were me, and Will Campbell's good, he worries me a little bit. And that every time I saw him anchor, it seemed like it was 6 inches away from the quarterback. So, he can stay in front. He's got good feet too, but as he's going backwards, it feels like he's leaning up against the quarterback every time. And at least Membo, if he misses, he's going to miss early because he's going to go try and chase the guy or something. But that would be my choice. I don't think it's who they're going to take. It sounds like Will Campbell is going to be the choice, but I don't know. You get to play GM only once in your life. You just go out and say, all right, here's what I would do. So
I don't hate it. I mean, Armand Membu is one of the only tackles in the country with 85-plus grades as a pass blocker and run blocker. Chris mentioned he's an elite athlete as well. Don't want to do this pick.
I mean, he's such a young player, too. Both him and Campbell are so young that there's a lot of development still to be had. And Chris makes a good point about Will Campbell. It seems like more often he would struggle with power rushers, right? When you think about his tape against Jared Verse, against a guy like Chris Braswell, you're not getting around Will Campbell because his footwork and his hands are so good, but you can try to get through him. So it's really a preference as far as what style of tackle that you want. And, some teams don't necessarily believe Will Campbell's a tackle. Mike Vrabel really likes him and says, hey, he should get a shot at left tackle. And that's the only thing I do wonder is the experience at left tackle with Membu playing on the right side at Missouri. Does he feel like Membu can flip over and have the same effectiveness, say, like a guy like Tristan Wirfs, who's done it? Guys who are that athletically special, they can flip over and do it. Might take an adjustment period, but both of them are really good players. And the top 3 to 5 offensive tackles in this class, there seems to be a lot of different opinions on the order of them.
Yeah, I like all 3 of them, honestly. I do. And I think we're going to look back on this draft, is my belief, because some of them are hurt and all. But I think we're going to look back on it and go, damn, that was the one year that there were 5 legitimate tackles. That why didn't I move up, or why didn't I go get one? Because it's not always that way. It's it just isn't. So anyway, that's my choice.
Listen, any way you support Drake May, whether it be a receiver or offensive tackle, you can't complain about that. So number 4 overall, Patriots fans should be very happy about that. Number 5 overall, Chris, Jacksonville's on the clock. Do they stick with the pick here, or do they maybe look to trade out of it?
You already know. I made a trade. I only made one trade in the whole thing, and I probably will do more by the time we circle back next week. But Ashton Genty is just one of those guys that, when I look at the NFL today, it feels like big plays in the passing game aren't really happening anymore. People are playing that soft shell, cover 2, cover 4, cover 6 kind of stuff, And so what we're getting, though, out of that are fewer big plays, but we're getting a lot more runs that are breaking into the secondary. And I'll be damned, this guy, every time I see him breaking in the secondary, he's standing in the end zone. And clearly Philadelphia a year ago, so many big plays come out of the running game now. And it just feels like until this cycle flips back and we start seeing more of the single high and more of the 8-man box and all of that, that there's an opportunity to make that play. And so the Chicago Bears, I'm just keep looking at them with Caleb Williams and Caleb's, I go back to my conversation about getting the ball out of his hands and not scramble around so much. So if you're gonna fix that, and you're Ben Johnson, like, how do you fix that? They've been addressing their offensive line. You come back and you get a back that can stick it in the end zone. Give me some cheap points on the other end. And it's the Detroit model, right? It just is. It's the way that they were able to do it in Detroit. So it's not that I don't have concerns with Genty. He's not a good blocker. He's good in the passing game and screens and flats, but he's not a route runner yet. Doesn't mean he should be. But, the one that finally sold me was I saw him at some workout with his shirt off, and I'm like, yeah, that guy's built like a tank, man. It's like he's only 5'8", but he's like that wide. And I could never understand why people just kept like bouncing off of him, that he would go through and guys would get fairly legitimate shots, and he just kept on going. I know Boise don't play against all the best teams. He's not playing in the SEC or the Big Ten, but he feels like a touchdown waiting to happen. And if you're not going to get him out of the passing game, then I think the running game's the next best. And he's the only running back I took in the first round.
He's special. I mean, in a stacked running back class, and we're going through the running back renaissance in the NFL right now, this is a special football player that stands above the rest of them. And we got to talk to him last offseason. We got to interview him on the College Show, and he talked about 3 things. He wants to run with the power of Marshawn Lynch, the balance of Alvin Kamara, and the receiving ability, the route running of Christian McCaffrey. And he showed that a little bit more in 2023. This past year, Boise's offense under Dirk Cutter just didn't quite emphasize that enough. They knew they could win with him getting 30 carries a game on the ground, but I think he can be that two-way threat, and I'm with you. The dream scenario for me with Ginty is behind that new Bears offensive line with Joe Thuney and Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson, Ben Johnson calling the plays. I would take him if he's there at 10. If they feel the need to get ahead of the Raiders at 6 to get him, if that's the guy they want, I'm with you on this trade. I absolutely love the idea of Ginty to the Bears, and I'm going to keep pushing for it through draft day.
It makes a lot of sense for Chicago with how much they revolutionized that offense, the offensive line this offseason. Ginty with a 99.9 career rushing grade for PFF. He shattered the yards after contact record, shattered the broken tackles record. Those were held by Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson. So Chris mentioned it. Today's day and age of the NFL, you might need to have an elite running back. Ginty is an elite running back, absolutely. So Ginty going to the Chicago Bears at number 5 overall. Chris, number 6 overall. Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock here. What do you have them doing?
Yeah, they're a little heartbroken, I would imagine, that they just lost out. And so that's the reason, because I think the Raiders probably would have taken Ginty.
Good point, yeah.
So they try to jump up. The Bears jump up in front of them. I'm sure that discussion's being had right now with that 5th pick overall. So that to me is where the real hustle of this thing. I don't know which offensive lineman the Patriots are going to take, but I do think they'll take whoever their favorite offensive lineman is. Ginty comes in right there. I hope I say his name right. Jahdae Barron.
Yep.
So Jahdae is. I just really enjoyed watching him play. He's physical. He's tough. He's all over the place. He seems to have every physical skill you can need. I took him to the Raiders. I know the Raiders are shuffling through and around. It seems like they always have been for the past decade, trying to figure out who's that. You think back in the day and all the shutdown corners that the Raiders used to have. And maybe he is that guy that sort of redefines what the Raiders secondary can be. And the physical play, and I think he has a chance to be a really good one.
I mean, listen, you mentioned it before. I mean, last in rushing grade last year for the Raiders, so yes, they'd be interested in Jitty. They're also last in coverage grade last year, too, so they need a cornerback. Jahdae Barron is absolutely one of the top ones.
Best zone coverage corner in the country this past year. Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham trying to run a heavy cover 3 system. Put him on the outside. He's got versatility in the slot you mentioned. He's got great feet, and he's really physical. He's about the action, even in the run game. I think Barron can be a star in the right system, and a system on defense that's going to emphasize heavy cover 3 like the Raiders are going to. He'd be a perfect fit.
Yep. All right, number 7 overall, Dalton's New York Jets are on the clock here, Chris. No pressure here. What do you have to do?
I did this as a special gift to him because I know how much he loves the Jets and how much he loves Mason Graham. So there you go. This is the dream scenario. I wavered on, we were talking about 5 and 4 and 6 and all that kind of stuff. And I know people love Mason Graham. But there are some players in this draft in that defensive tackle position. One of them is his teammate that I just really like. Kenneth Grant is, if you want to get off the bus with somebody, right, that's the guy. 6'4", 331. I think that he might have to come off the field a little bit more. So if you're talking about a draft pick this high, that can be tough. I like Derek Harmon of Oregon as well. I mean, another 313-pound guy. And compared to 296 for Mason Graham. And Walter Nolan's another one out of Mississippi, who's, if I remember right, was like the top high school recruit coming out in his year. And they're all athletic. They all have good moves. Graham's he only ended up with like 3.5 sacks, which was kind of I put him back in the category with these guys, and I'm like, God, would I really pull the trigger on somebody with 3.5 sacks to come in and be, a top 10 pick for me? But it sounds like there's enough noise around that, and clearly the Jets could use some help right there. And you're never going to go wrong with him, right? He's never going to be a guy. It's like Karlaftis with the Chiefs. Like when I first watched Karlaftis, I was like, he's all right. He's and he's just going to work his way through every play till he gets to the quarterback or die. He's just one of those kind of guys, and those kind of guys go a long way in the National Football League. It's a long season, and I think he'll be a cornerstone of how they expect you to work now with the New York Jets. Aaron Glenn's going to go, look, we're going to kill you guys in training camp, just like we did in Detroit. Live with us, and we're going to get there just like we did in Detroit. And you better have somebody who's willing to play every play as hard as Mason Graham's going to play, and I think that's a good cornerstone.
Love it from all angles. I've mentioned that I think there's 4 guys that stand above everybody else in this class. 3 of them have already been taken in Hunter, Carter, and Ginty. This is the 4th one. I think Mason Graham is either the 3rd or 4th best football player in this draft. And you mentioned the low sack total, but this year the idea of playing against Michigan, because all around they had the best defensive line in the country, was, hey, get rid of the football, but because we can't block these guys. There was at one point I looked at the average time to throw against Michigan, and it was like 2.1 seconds. It was just, we have to get rid of the ball or our quarterback's going to die. So the low sack total, I'm not worried about. He also led the nation in run defense grade this year. He can play from a million different alignments. There's even reps of him standing up off the edge in pass rush situations. I think he's everything you want in an interior player. I think he'll be a top 10 player at that position in a couple of years.
He and Quinnen Williams together would be a lethal pairing and for the New York Jets. So I love that pick as well. Carolina Panthers at number 8 overall. Chris, what do you have them doing here?
I'm about to die on this pick because
I love it.
This one just killed me. I mean, it really did. It's like, so Tedero McMillan is who I eventually settled on, and he's this big, strong, classic X, 220 pounds, 10-inch hands. He was the best player in high school. He set all kinds of records at Arizona, but he's he probably in reality runs 4.6. So what happens in the NFL? You play X receivers, the position I played, and so you're over on one side. There's at least 2 receivers on the other side, if not 3. So now the defense has to decide, are they going to play single safety and help to the 3 receiver side, or are they going to play, give some help to the X receiver? And if they're afraid of you running by that corner, they're going to give some help. Or if you're a superstar player, you're Randy Moss, you're whatever, they're always going to have an overhang to that side, which then opens up the strong side, right? And my concern is, do I think he'll win every jump ball? Do I think he's good catch and run? All those things. But at 4'6", does he have enough to scare defenses into rotating to him? I don't think so. I think that if you get a 6'1" or 6'2" corner that's playing out on him, almost any NFL corner is going to be able to run with him. It's just a matter of he doesn't get overwhelmed from a size standpoint. But he does so many things well and catches slants and strong hands and just knows how to run after the catch and all that kind of stuff. I'll be perfectly honest with you. My favorite player at receiver in the draft is Luther Burden out of Missouri. I mean, damn, that guy he's just awesome. I mean, it's just like a Deebo Samuel with speed kind of thing. And I so badly wanted to plug him in there, and I knew they weren't going to pick him there, and so I just went with that. Matthew Golden, with the way that he can run, I mean, 4.29, if the guy does nothing but clear routes for your offense all year and open up digs and crosses, he's worth his weight in gold. So I was like, I just went back and forth, and I finally went, all right, just screw it. McMillan's going to be the pick here. Just write him down.
I love it. Look, I know that the focus has been on the Panthers' defense, and they had the worst defense, the lowest graded defense in football last year. But their offense, and for as much as Bryce Young improved in the second half of last year, he was fantastic down the stretch last year. And I think the biggest thing was being more fearless throwing into tighter windows, right? And having faith in himself to make those throws. Well, if you have a guy out there that is 6'5" and 220 and can jump out of the gym, Bryce Young feels even less afraid of making those throws, because that's got to be the idea still. But with this Panthers team, you took Bryce Young first overall 2 years ago. You still want to build around him. And I know they took Xavier Legette in the first round last year, but they don't have a weapon like this. You add this weapon, fine, spend the rest of your draft on defense, but they're missing this caliber of receiver. I love the idea of McMillan to the Panthers. I don't know that they're actually going to do it, because Dave Canales knows they need to fix this defense early and often, but I would really think about it too if he's on the board there at 8.
The best way to get fired, though, if you're Dave, is to not putting points on the board. People don't buy tickets to watch football games that are, 13-7.
Yeah.
They just don't. And so it's hard. I will say that just like pick number 5, I almost did a trade here, but I wasn't that sure that Shedeur Sanders was going to go to the Saints. But let's say, I think if I were the Saints, and whether I wanted him or not, I would let it be known that I'm going to take Shedeur. One, I want to take the pressure off the pick, Two, if somebody wants to jump ahead of me, I'm probably okay with that too, because I'm not positive about Shedeur, but I could see some movement. If somebody really, it's Pittsburgh, let's just throw a name out there, wants Shedeur, it's going to happen here, right? Because there's going to be a fear that the Saints are going to be the one. So there could be some action there, but yeah, so I've just given away my next pick. So I didn't have the trade. So I do think that the Saints, who I don't know what they're going to do if they don't draft a quarterback, and maybe it's not Shedeur that they like, but that seems to be the next one on the board.
There's Jackson Dart rumors of them, the Shedeur Sanders rumors of them, but now with Derek Carr's shoulder injury, if they don't take a quarterback, it's probably Spencer Rattler all year for them next year.
We're going to learn everything we need to know about this new regime, Kellen Moore and all these guys coming in here, about what their vision is. Because lately the Saints have still had, even ever since Drew Brees retired, they've had this short-term vision of, hey, we're still trying to win this division. We're still trying to make the playoffs. But they need a hard reset. And whether that's with a quarterback now or not, look, there's an argument that they should just take a trench player, because it's so bad on both sides in the trenches. Get a quarterback next year. Start Spencer Rattler for a year. Get in the top 5, maybe even number 1 next year for Art. Get another Manning in New Orleans, maybe. But we're going to know about their vision with this 9th pick. Even if they take Shedeur, they're going to try to keep winning games now, because I do think he's pro-ready and he should start day one. The question that I would have with the Saints and Shedeur is, you mentioned it, he's more of a pocket quarterback. He's a rhythm passer. This was the team with the lowest pass blocking grade in the league last year. Yeah. They need significant improvement on their offensive line no matter who's playing quarterback.
Well, and that's what brings me to the point that I almost made with this one, is that Will Campbell is an LSU kid, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he walks across the hall and all of a sudden he's over there playing. So they're going to have some real firsthand information on whether or not, and I don't have him off my board. I know the entire world has him going to New England, and that's probably where he's going. But, could this be a spot, if in fact that is, because I agree with you. I think if he's going to get a grace year no matter what. And in Philadelphia, how did they build their team, right? Howie Roseman has been offensive line, defensive line, and he's been on the Cowboys as a coach, and he's been with Philadelphia now, who used that philosophy and rode it right to the Super Bowl. So it would not surprise me if the other tackle ends up going here with this pick.
And won a Super Bowl with a second-round pick quarterback, right, and Jalen Hurts, right? So there is a benefit to taking the long game there. The only other thing we'll tell you about inside information, Doug Nussmeier is the Saints' new offensive coordinator. His son is the current LSU quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. So he's got all the inside information he needs on Will Campbell if he wants it.
And maybe Garrett Nussmeier next year, because Garrett Nussmeier is a really good quarterback in his own right. Maybe Doug is to coach his son next year, too. That's a little 2026 scouting for you guys right there.
And if you get Spencer Rattler, there's a good chance you got a top 3 pick next year, right?
That's not a worst thing in the world.
I mean, you can make the argument that they should 100% not take a quarterback this year. Just
tank it.
And you're not tank it. You're still going to try and win football games. But you're going to build for when you do have your quarterback. And so when you do play with a rookie quarterback, you've at least got some protection built in.
And Kellen Moore just got hired. He's going to survive next year no matter what happens, essentially.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think that might have the worst strategy in the world. Butchador Sanders goes there at number 9. Chris, number 10 overall. Used to be the Bears' pick, but since they traded up to the Jaguars, this is now Jacksonville's pick at number 10 overall. What are they going to do here?
Yeah, well, this is one of those that we were talking about, Mason Graham. But I'm perfectly happy dropping down, getting additional picks, and taking Walter Nolan out of Mississippi. I think he's a phenomenal player. Maybe he wasn't quite what everybody thought he was going to be coming out of high school, but there's certainly enough there. And the one thing that I do want to see out of, especially if you're going to tell me it's a 3 technique, is I want to see some wiggle, right? I want to see some ability. And when you can add 200 or 300 pounds or whatever he is to some wiggle, that's a pretty good player for me right there. And I think Jacksonville just, we've been talking about skill position players with them for so long now. And I just feel like let's get it back in the trenches. Let's just go beat somebody up. Let's not put everything on Trevor Lawrence to win every game by himself. And I feel like that those defensive tackles, any of them, are very worthy of being taken anywhere in this territory.
You know me, I'm obsessed with the idea that if they stay at 5, they should take Mason Graham as long as Travis Hunter is not on the board, right? And if they were to get, again, more capital, let's say they get one of the Bears' second-round picks out of that trade, a top 40 selection, and they end up with Walter Nolan at 10, I think it's the exact type of piece they're missing on their defense is that 3 technique. And their defensive tackles had the second lowest pass rush grade in the league last year. I think Graham would be perfect. I think Nolan would be a fantastic fit. If you got an extra second rounder, you mentioned it, keep rounding off this team around Trevor Lawrence, eventually get in the offensive line and protect him too. But they got to get better in the trenches, and I think Liam Cohen and James Gladstone know that.
Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen, and Walter Nolan in that defensive line.
And Eric Armstead.
Armstead. Yeah. That's nasty. Walter Nolan actually was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. Number 2 was Travis Hunter. So anytime you're above Travis Hunter in any ranking, you're probably going to be a pretty good football player. Walter Nolan, again, it was a little slow at Texas A&M, like Chris said, but at Ole Miss this past year, he was an elite player, had the second best run defense grade of any D tackle in the country, only behind Mason Graham. All right, Chris, number 11 overall, the San Francisco 49ers coming off a disappointing year. What are they going to do here at number 11?
I kind of fell in love with Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. I think for all you want to talk about with Abdul Carter, he has that same sort of skill set. I mean, he may not have gotten the same opportunities, but I remember watching Micah Parsons out of Penn State and going, this guy can really rush the quarterback, but he's an inside linebacker. How valuable is that kind of, what does that mean? And then all of a sudden you see him get on a running back, and it's like, oh, God, like, Mom, look away, kind of thing. And so I think that Campbell has the Abdul Carter, has the Micah Parsons. He has that built into him. How exactly he would get used, I don't know, but San Francisco's lost a couple linebackers here now. So it feels like that they could use some juice. It's a team, they saw Kyle Shanahan at the owners' meeting. He was like, I know, we got some things we got to fix here. But somehow they always seem to be pretty good. But I said he wouldn't fall out of my top 10 when I was watching the tape. He fell to 11, so I couldn't go any more than that.
Hey, Jahad Campbell, the best linebacker in the draft, paired with Fred Warner, the best linebacker in football. That is a lethal linebacker room right
You
there.
talk about those dream duos. And it is an interesting strategy because they do have a lot of needs beyond Nick Bosa on the defensive line, but Jahad Campbell's clearly far and away the best linebacker in this draft, no question. And we've talked about it again, the defensive line depth could have the 49ers going, okay, you know what? We'll take a couple of these guys on day 2. We'll fill it out next to Bosa, and we'll have the best pair of linebackers in football, like you just mentioned, with Warner and Campbell. So, Robert Saleh going back there might play a factor in this. Does he want D lineman? Does he want to replace Dre Greenlaw? We know how valuable he was, but Campbell's a great football player and far and away the best linebacker in this class.
And Greenlaw was out of his mind. I don't know what he was like as a person. I don't think I ever personally met him, but as a player, like, even Fred Warner thought he was crazy. It's like, and I don't know. I just try not to get hit by him. But when those two were together, it was really special. Now, I don't know if Jahad's crazy or not, but probably not. But he can play. I know he can play.
I'll tell you what he is that Greenlaw was, and now obviously Greenlaw's in Denver. Campbell's great in coverage too. He was one of the best coverage linebackers in college football, and that might be another factor in this pick of, okay, we've got that coverage complement again like we had with Greenlaw and Warner. That's a big help too. But he's the one linebacker in this class that you've got a three-way threat. The run defense, the coverage, and the pass rush, like you mentioned, if you want to blitz him.
75-plus grades in all three aspects this past year. He's one of the only few linebackers in the country to do that. So Jahad Campbell loved that pick alongside Fred Warner at number 11 overall. Number 12 overall, Chris, the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock here. What are they going to do?
I still had Will Campbell sitting there on the board, and that was a little too far for him to fall, and if you're Jerry Jones and you just watch the Eagles win a Super Bowl behind a great offensive line and a great defensive line, and you go, God, I wish I had all that stuff, and you go, well, when I won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, I did have all that stuff, right? So let's go back to who we are. And does it matter that we have the best running back, or does it really matter that we have the best offensive line? And maybe it's, too many offensive linemen, but I don't think they'd look at it like that. Like let's go build something that, we can protect our quarterback, who's gone through quite a few injuries at this point, is not as mobile as he once was. And I know I can find a running back in this draft in a later round. And if I put a great offensive line in front of him, it doesn't matter who the running back is. If PFF data over the years have proven out any one point, it's that it's more important to have a hole than somebody who can run through a hole, right? You make a hole, I'll find you 100 guys that can run through it. And so I'm not positive, but Will Campbell's too good a talent if he were to fall this far to not.
I like this a lot because I look at this Cowboys offensive line with Zach Martin retiring now and Tyler Guyton even only 1 year in. It's hard to have faith in what we saw in his rookie year. I think they're unsettled at 4 of their 5 spots aside from Tyler Smith at left guard. And you could argue, is Will Campbell a tackle? Cool. Could he be the right tackle if they want to still have faith in Guyton as on the left side, but Terrence Steele's been struggling? Cool. Trevor Sikkema's even brought up, could Will Campbell be an elite center in this league? He's got the lack of length, but he's smart enough to do it. Anywhere you want to put him, I think Campbell, there's arguments about is he a tackle, is he not? I think that's why it's the argument that he could be the best offensive lineman in this draft because he gives you options. He's so cerebral in the way he goes about the game, and I think Dallas would have options with him as far as where to play him on the offensive line, and that's when those Cowboys offenses were so great with Dak, with Zeke Elliott, went back a few years ago because they had the best offensive line in football.
Yeah, absolutely. Will Campbell, one of the smartest players in this year's draft. He was calling out protections at left tackle when usually the center does that for an offensive line. That's how smart of a football player Will Campbell is. Goes to the Dallas Cowboys there at number 12 overall. Chris, I'm sure the Miami Dolphins would love to have Will Campbell there at number 13 overall, but with obviously they have to still address the offensive line here. What are they going to do?
Yeah, I stayed with the offensive line. They've just ignored this position, for too long, and it's a little bit of a tough one for me. I think that Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State, I know he's coming off the knee injury, only played in 6 games, but I saw Anthony Munoz go to the Hall of Fame. He came in with a knee injury in his senior year, or whatever year it was, coming out of USC, and he was the greatest player I ever saw. So it doesn't completely shake me up. And for the long term with Tua and what they want to do with the passing game, it just feels like if you keep Tua alive, if you just give them another half step to let those receivers go to work, that, it really has a chance. So I probably, unless like the top 4 tackles are off the board, I'm probably sticking to some kind of offensive lineman for them.
I agree. It's a huge need, whether it's at left tackle or at left guard, where they have Patrick Paul and Liam Eichenberg slated to start. But the only thing that gets interesting with this is all the very, very recent developments with the Miami Dolphins. One, that they're going to try to seek a trade of Jalen Ramsey, and two, Chris Greer in his press conference on top of that mentioned, right now, Patrick Paul is our starting left tackle. That's the direction that we want to go. So then you start to wonder, if Campbell were on the board, would you move him inside to guard? Or even Simmons or Kelvin Banks, is it that left guard spot they'd be looking at? And then you sit there and you go, well, day 2 might be the sweet spot for interior offensive linemen in this draft. Could they wait? Now that they're trying to trade Ramsey, do they try to fix this secondary? It's getting harder and harder to really get a read on what the Dolphins are going to do at 13.
It makes a lot of sense, though. Obviously, with Teron Armstead retiring recently for Miami, they need help on the left side of their offensive line desperately. Josh Simmons will provide that. He actually, in a limited sample size, but he still had the lowest pressure rate allowed among all offensive tackles in college football this past year. So wish we could have saw a full season from him, but still showed some really encouraging stuff from limited tape this past year. Number 14 overall, Chris. I'm sure a lot of Colts fans see a guy on the board here that you think could really help him out, and they're probably begging you to make this pick here, number 14 overall.
I hope so. Then I have fans somewhere, But Tyler Warren is, the only reason I hesitated at all with Tyler Warren is that I really like both of these tight ends in here.
Yeah.
I don't know how I get back to Colston Loveland. But I think that when you're going through a transition at quarterback, and I don't know if it's going to be Daniel Jones, I don't know if it's going to be Anthony Richardson, but I know that they can run the football with Jonathan Taylor. I know they can do that. And then so you go, okay, Tyler Warren is not the best receiving tight end in this draft. That, to me, would be Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. But Tyler Warren can play fullback. He can play on the line of scrimmage. He can catch balls down the field. If he catches a ball and you play safety, because he's not trying to avoid you. He's trying to run over you, right, down the field. And he even played Wildcat quarterback. I mean, it's insane what this guy is able to do. So he's, and he wears Dallas Clark's old 44. So it'll be a fun pick. If he were to make it that far, then I think they would be ecstatic.
And the funny part, actually, I'll bring up the number 44 first. I don't know if you heard this quote from the Combine, but somebody asked him, why do you wear number 44? There's not a lot of tight ends that wear that. And he said when he was young, his dad would show him film of John Riggins and would tell him, hey, when you have the football in your hands, you run like this. And he certainly does. That's true. I love the idea of Warren in Shane Steichen's offense a little more than Loveland because of the yards after the catch and the broken tackles and that ability with the ball in his hands, right? They run a lot of RPOs. They want to get a lot of balls into the flat in the same way that Steichen used to with Dallas Goedert in Philadelphia. So I do love them both. They're both excellent talents, both of these tight ends, but I think Warren would fit in with the Colts a little bit better. And you mentioned he's a nasty run blocker, too. I mean, this is the closest thing you have in this draft to a player like George Kittle.
And Steichen, remember where he's from, too. He came from Philadelphia. And so the belief in we can overwhelm you at both sides of the line of scrimmage. And if you don't feel comfortable yet with your quarterback, a great way to make them more comfortable is to be able to run it better, to add basically another tackle on the end of the line of scrimmage or in the backfield, and a pass protector if needed. So Loveland's going to come up in the conversation very soon. He was not getting out of my first round. But I just thought for the Colts, this was a great pick.
A player that Colts fans love, a player that Anthony Richardson will love, and a player that Jonathan Taylor will love as well for Indianapolis. I think this is a home run pick for Indianapolis. Number 14. Number 15 overall, Chris, the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock. What are they going to do here?
You get my favorite player, or one of my favorite players. I think Luther Burden is a guy that is going to take the league by storm. I really do. When I was watching him, I was just going, oh my gosh, there's nothing this guy does that I don't just love. And I think he's one of those when you talk about Deebo Samuel, he plays like that, but he's faster. I think he ran a 4.4 or something. I mean, he was
4.41, I think it was.
Yeah, and I kept waiting for something. Like, what is it that I don't like about this? Why is this guy not in the top 15? And he had a couple of bad blocks. He had, a couple of things which was surprising for me because he does play in the slot quite a bit. He had a few drops in there, but I just thought that when you have a physical presence at the wide receiver position, it just does something to your team, right? There's just a little bit extra nastiness kind of feeling out of it, and he sticks it in the end zone. I mean, I just feel like that 26 touchdowns when he was playing in college and playing for Missouri. It's not like he was playing for Alabama or Ohio State. It was for Missouri. And he just proved over and over again a physical toughness and a guy that I think we're going to be talking about a lot. And, Atlanta has a lot of offensive weapons. I know they're probably going, another offensive guy, whatever. But I thought he was a unique guy. They need a receiver, and he's a plug and play.
I love Drake London, Luther Burden III, Bijan Robinson, Michael Penix Jr.
Darnell
Mooney too. That is a disgusting offense and a great offensive line Atlanta's got as well. Love that pick there. One of the best yards after the catch receiver, I think, in this draft.
Yeah, I think this was a thought that I had last year before they took Michael Penix. I thought Rome Odunze could have been an option for him. I think one more weapon for him on the outside would help a lot, and Burden adds a different dimension that they don't have in their offense.
Absolutely. The most broken tackles after the catch this past year, Luther Burden III led all FBS receivers in forced missed tackles after the catch. At number 16 overall, Chris, the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. What are they going to do?
Assuming Will Johnson's fine, the cornerback for Michigan, then this is, 6'2" corners don't grow on trees, right? You got to have the ability to be able to go out and make plays the way that he's proven that he can. He comes up, he makes hits. He's a good blitzer. There are some teams that got some double moves and some different things, but I just feel like that was the best of the corners after Travis Hunter, and I feel like there's a little drop after that. So if you want a corner, not that Ravel and some of these other guys aren't going to be good players, but there's risk involved, there's injuries involved, and so just sort of feel like that's where we are on the board, that if you want a corner, you better go get it.
Play a lot of off-zone coverage. His football IQ is outstanding, a lot like Travis Hunter, where he can recognize route concepts at a very high level. And at Arizona, where they play a lot of zone coverage, off coverage too, he'd be a perfect fit, I think.
He's a guy that makes up for less than elite speed with elite technique and intelligence, right? And he's so well taught. You mentioned it. As long as he's healthy, those first three corners are in a separate group from the rest of these guys. And 4 through 10 are pretty good, late round 1 all the way through day 2 guys. But if you want a star corner, you take these first 3. And Arizona does need, I think it's an underrated need, they need help on the outside. They're good in the slot with Garrett Williams. They got good safeties, but outside corner could be a spot where they could really improve their defense.
Absolutely. All right, first half of the first round of Chris's mock draft is done. We'll get to the second half in just a second. Before that, we're going to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does your child's future success look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can help make it easier to achieve with a kid's investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest when they're minors, but a kid's investment account allows you to invest on their behalf now, giving their investments more time to grow. It's all online, and setting up an account can take you just 5 minutes. Then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and tutors to music classes, and when they're adults and out on their own, they can help use the funds for anything that they need. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEETfabric.com/PFFNFL. portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Chris, I wish I got on that when I was younger, honestly. I could use the long-term investment right now with my bank account.
I wish I could read commercials like you do. That was really good. We're here in the Western and Southern studios, and if you want to support PFF, it's a great way to do it. Go out and buy this product. But Western and Southern's been a great asset for us here in Cincinnati for a long, long time, and we're very, very appreciative of those guys. And honestly, they're a great citizen of Cincinnati. So a lot of friends over there. They've been great to us, and
well, speaking of Cincinnati,
Meat Fabric.
Well, speaking of Cincinnati, they're next up here.
There
number
you go.
17 overall. What do the Cincinnati Bengals do? Your Cincinnati Bengals do at number 17.
I never thought I would go past Shamar Stewart for them because I just think that, he's a really incredible athlete. But Jalen Walker still, I didn't have him picked. It's one of those, when you go on the mock draft simulator, the PFF mock draft simulator, and you're sitting there and Jalen Walker, who a lot of people have in the top 10, is still sitting there on the board. I'm like, okay, I can't pass on him here. But he's, again, the same sort of players. I thought one of the problems that the Bengals had a year ago was that they didn't have another pass rusher, right? They just ended up, they just didn't have that other guy other than Henderson. And so when Walker comes up here, he is that Micah Parsons kind of guy. He can rush the quarterback. He can when he can get on the edge. He can blitz up the middle. He can get on a back and win easily. And maybe the problem is that he doesn't have a defined role. But I think that as we watch Cincinnati play this year, they're going to be a really aggressive kind of mindset with how they're going to approach this season. And when you get somebody like Jalen Walker that can truly just come from anywhere, I think that's the kind of mentality, the kind of tool. You can take some of the pressure off the secondary. They gave up too many big plays on the back end. And one way to kind of shut that down is to go ahead and, try to, get some pressure on the quarterback. But Al Golden, he's not shy, the new defensive coordinator. He's going to go get them, and he's going to need some guys to go do that. But you've also got a guy who's 4'5" and can cover when needed. But I think it gives that sort of versatility, allows Al Golden to do some things that maybe he couldn't have gotten away with the current people on there.
I think the biggest question, I'm curious just what your opinion is, because you went a little bit into Walker's role here, but what do you do with him on early downs? Are we talking that he's going to get drafted by a team like Cincinnati as a full-time edge player and maybe add a few more pounds and really sustain himself on early downs there? Or are we going to go linebacker early and then blitzer and kind of, is it this hybrid? This is the thing with Walker, is kind of trying to figure out in whatever defense he's going to be in that role, because he's been rumored a lot to Carolina at number 8, which they have that blueprint when they used to have Frankie Louvu would be linebacker on early downs and then rush the passer in obvious passing situations. Where does Walker's role fall in line with that for maybe and we don't know with Al Golden not coaching a game here yet. That's really the biggest mystery. But where would you have Walker ideally, let's say, 80 to 90% of the time?
Yeah, I think he's going to be in that split role, exactly what you're talking about. But you have to remember Lamar Jackson plays in this division too. And at the end of the day, you've got to have somebody who can spy a player like Lamar Jackson. And I think Jalen Walker could do that role. And so when you're talking about somebody who could potentially fill 3 different roles, stand-up linebacker, blitz linebacker, and the spy for the team that you got to beat. You got to beat Baltimore to win this division. We've learned that now. You got to stop Lamar Jackson on key downs in third down, and I just thought Jalen Walker could be that. I thought he could be the guy that, like, hey, we're not fooling anybody. We're setting Jalen right there. We're going to go cover your wideouts. Lamar, if you want to take off, the minute Lamar starts to move, and he's going to read where the gaps in the offensive line and defensive line are, and so is Jalen Walker. And the minute those gaps appear, go get them, right? That's how I would play it.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. I mean, we saw him do it so much at Georgia. And you mentioned the fact that he can play from so many alignments can be an asset if you use it right.
Absolutely,
for sure.
yeah. The Bengals need help at linebacker. Jalen Walker can do that. They need a running mate for Trey Hendrickson as well. He could do that as well. So, yeah, Bengals need defensive talent. And Jalen Walker, like Chris said, could be a top 10 pick, but here he falls to the Bengals, number 17 overall. I'm sure a lot of fans would be very, very happy with that selection. Number 18 overall, Chris, the Seattle Seahawks are on the clock here. What are they going to do?
I can't pass on Shamar Stewart again. You put on the tape with him at Texas A&M, and of course Myles Garrett, same school, same comparable numbers there. But you go like 40-inch vertical, like that's like jumping over the basket. Like it's insane. 34 and 8 arm, 6'5", 267, just a classic guy. You don't get many freaky traits. And you see just how athletic he is. I mean, it just jumps out on every single play. Now, do I think we've seen the full extent of what he can be? I don't. You watch him and you go, he should have been a lot better than that, right? He should have put up numbers that were better than that. But I do believe that any NFL coach would look at this thing and go, I'm taking him. Believe me, I can teach him how to beat that guy one-on-one.
Prototype.
Right?
Prototype.
I'm going to teach him a couple of things here, and I do believe he's the one guy that could come out of this draft, and we all go in 3 years' time, how did Shamar Stewart make it to number 18 in the draft or wherever he ends up falling? Because he has that kind of physical ability.
It's so hard with these Texas A&M guys. We've talked about it a lot on our show. You've got Walter Nolan, who kind of had the same issues at A&M and then goes to Ole Miss, and he's one of the best defensive tackles in the country. Shamar Stewart, same idea. Nick Scorton, just the role that they asked these guys to play was more conservative, was more geared towards stopping the run and kind of doing a lot of dirty work instead of pinning their ears back. And that's why you see the lack of production with Stewart. That's the big question is, can he be an elite pass rusher, or are you getting a guy that's an elite run defender because with his power and his length, he can be that, and maybe he gets you 8 or 9 sacks a year and he's a B to B plus pass rusher. What is the balance there, right? And you mentioned it. All of his issues seem to be teachable. It's certainly not physical. No. It's just a matter of making that adjustment from the struggles that a lot of these guys had rushing the passer at A&M.
Nobody had a better pre-draft process than Shamar Stewart.
True.
He had an unbelievable combine, one of the most athletic combines we've ever seen from an edge defender. And also, Chris, at the Senior Bowl, we were down there. He was the best player at the Senior Bowl. He was unblockable in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, too. So I think Seattle, number 18 overall, be a really fun pick for that defense there. Number 19 overall, Trevor Sikkema's Tampa Bay Buccaneers here on the clock. What are they going to do?
Yeah, a lot of people have Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety, in the top, 10. And from a talent standpoint, I think he ran 4.5, I believe, and that's okay. But for a safety, if you're going to go top 10, I want more of a free safety. Like, teams will pay for somebody that will sit in the middle of the field and keep touchdowns off the board, right? And I just felt like that Starks was a little bit more. Now, he played a lot of man coverage, a Brian Branch kind of guy, right? He played a lot of man coverage in the slot and matched up against slot cornerbacks, around the league. So I felt like that, he saw the best. He was able to hang in there in the man coverage against those guys. But I thought his best work was down around the line of scrimmage. And for me to go top 10 with a safety, I want somebody that would sit in the middle of the field. Not everybody may feel that way, but that's kind of the way so it's not a knock on his talent. It's more of where I think his specific skill set is.
Yeah, I think regardless of his role, Starks to me is the best safety in this class. I just don't have him on that Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James type of. He's just not built the same. And you mentioned he doesn't quite have the speed. Where Starks wins is mentally he's a step ahead a lot, and the versatility and alignment. I'll tell you what, you talk versatility, you get him and Antoine Winfield both on that back end on a team that needs help over the middle of the field in coverage, and he can get in the slot. And even though you already have Tyke Smith, you can really lock it down on the inside there. I think he can play a variety of roles for you, and he's a really smart football player. But I'm with you. I don't know about top 10 talk just because doesn't have that feel to me that I felt like a few years ago with Kyle Hamilton, who should have gone higher than 14. He should have been a top 10 pick, but I don't see him on that level, but he can be a really good player in this league for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. The most versatile safety in this draft. Could play in the box, could play in the slot, could play at free safety too. You have Antoine Winfield already there as well. Could be already one of the best safety pairings we have in the NFL if he goes to Tampa Bay. At number 20 overall, Chris, Denver Broncos are on the clock, probably looking for another weapon for Bo Nix in that offense. What are they going to do here?
Well, you keep hearing them talk about they want that magical
the Jokers.
player. The Joker.
Yeah, the Jokers they want.
Whatever it is. Sean's going to come up with a name for it. You know that. And so I gave him a Joker, man. I put Matthew Golden and 4.29 speed and right in their hands. And that, again, so much of what teams want to do in the NFL right now is they've almost given up on throwing deep balls behind people. But if you can plant that seed in their heads that you still have to play the deep ball, it's such an advantage. You're clearing two safeties. You're keeping people out of the run game. You're creating so much space underneath. And when teams do decide to play, single high against you, are you really willing to let Matthew Golden and 4.29 sit there and go one-on-one? No, you're going to back up, which is going to give you a 10-yard pivot route anytime you want it. Like literally anytime you want to gain 10 yards, they're going to give it to you because they can't give up the one over the top. But he was a little thicker. For some reason in my brain, I had him as being like this little skinny guy, and he's really not. He plays thicker than that. He's good after the catch. I didn't see big negative plays. Maybe his lateral wiggle wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. But the sucker, he's just a good football player. There's nothing, plays above his head. He snatches the ball away. He does things that really veteran receivers can do. And a little bit as I was doing this mock draft, in my own mind, I was surprised that Golden got this far. I thought that he would go before this because in my mind, I think he's a little higher than this.
The public, the users in the mock draft simulator, the most common pick for the Dallas Cowboys at 12, I think either first or second is Matthew Golden. They think he could get that high. I know Daniel Jeremiah has had massive praise thinking about Golden possibly being wide receiver 1, and he's a really good route runner. You mentioned the body control is excellent, the adjustment to inaccurate footballs that he saw pretty often at Houston and at Texas. His ability to adjust to the football. And like you said, Sean Payton's still going to want to run the ball. And Bo Nix is incredibly accurate underneath. But if you have Golden taking the top off and even running those routes, some of those routes underneath as the Z in that offense, I think it makes a lot of sense for this to be the pick. Him, if Luther Burden was there, if Tedero McMillan for any reason were there, I think, look, receiver, tight end, running back, they're going to attack all three of these positions in this draft. They're trying to stack this offense for Bo.
Matthew Golden, I think, has the best footwork of any receiver in this class. I mean, his route running that he does out there and his release packages are outstanding. So love that pick there for Denver at number 20. Pittsburgh, number 21, Chris. So they still need a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, as of right now, has not signed yet with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what are they going to do here at 21?
Well, this one will stir the pot here a little bit, I would imagine. But I kept thinking about, if I were Mike Tomlin and I'm watching, we're all kind of watch television and what's winning today, right? So what won? Philadelphia won. Great defense, defensive line, offensive line, power football, and a quarterback that can move. Jalen Hurts, I'll never forget watching that national championship game where he got benched. Tua comes in, throws the game winner. And I just remember thinking, this poor kid, he's never going to recover from this. Like, how do you emotionally get benched, watch your team win a national championship? Now that we've gotten to know him, he's the most intense human being I've ever met in my life, a power lifter. He does all this stuff. But in Philadelphia, they took him in the second round. And I was like, I don't know about, I was like, I don't know about
Carson Wentz already.
Carson Wentz,
Yeah, I mean, who drafts a quarterback in the second round? You're either it or you're not it. Like, what are you doing? And then you just kept watching him play. But I'm going to go back to what I'm seeing in the league right now, which is these all these soft shell coverages. So you load up and you get a few good receivers, and Pickens is certainly there and be able to do it. But I keep thinking the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the way they play defense and that defensive line, they're going to be in every game, right? They're going to be in every game. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter. They're going to play great defense. Tomlin's going to have them in the game some way, somehow. And if you could just add one special play out of the quarterback position every game, right? They've had Kenny Pickett. They've had, Ben was that guy for a long time, not as a runner, but as a guy, get off of me, to throw the ball. And the more I was watching Milroe, I was like, he can throw it.
Yeah,
he can throw it well enough. He's Jalen Hurts throwing the ball, but God, this guy, when he takes off and runs, is like, wow.
4-3, yeah.
Yeah, so can we talk about him in terms of that 1, 2, or 3 special plays that keep a drive alive that turn into a field goal? Now let's turn it over to TJ and the guys and let them try and win a game in the fourth quarter. The more I thought about it, and it doesn't even bother me if Aaron Rodgers comes in and plays a year, right? And you have Milroe sort of sitting there and learning from him. But at the end of the year with Aaron Rodgers, unless they go win the Super Bowl or whatever, and then he'd probably retire anyway. But you've got Milroe, and I think that Tomlin has probably seen enough. He was a defensive coordinator at Minnesota before he came over to Pittsburgh. His heart probably is still on defense, and I think most defensive coordinators believe the same thing. Just don't screw it up on offense and we'll win it on defense. It's really not true, and I tell them that all the time, but they don't listen to what I say anyway. But with Milroe, I just keep thinking there's a path to him being Jalen Hurts, and an offense that would be built in the same sort of way, and he throws it well enough. But with these 2 deep safeties playing back and shell coverages, there's no way to cover all the gaps. And so if you've got a guy that can run like he can run and throw it well enough, that there's a path to the Steelers being a dominant football team, almost doing the same thing that the Philadelphia Eagles in the same state are doing.
So there's a couple of things here I think about with Milroe. One, I think we would agree, without question, the most physically gifted quarterback in this class, right? Between the speed with his feet, he's got the most powerful arm in this class. No question. The big-time throw rates show it in college at Alabama. The flaws are with timing and accuracy and footwork and just the minor details that you mentioned it. If you didn't have to start him week 1 or at all this year, that would be the ideal scenario. Now, where I find it interesting with Pittsburgh is, I was doing something, I was writing an article for the website last week, and I was thinking about what would an offense centered around Jalen Milroe look like. And I go back to what the Carolina Panthers did with Cam Newton, especially that year they made the Super Bowl. We're going to run the hell out of the football, and we're going to throw it over the top. There's not going to be a whole lot of in between here, and that's why they lost that Super Bowl, because Denver prevented him from getting it over the top. But that's how you have to operate with Milroe. We're either here or we're here, and there's not a whole lot in between. Now you're about to. I know you're about to say it.
Metcalf and George Pickens.
You have Metcalf and Pickens, and it's really how the Steelers' offense operated anyway last year with Russell Wilson probably throwing the ball with a little more touch than a Milroe right now, but it was run the ball or get over the top. And this year they have a second guy and one of the best in the game to do it with DK Metcalf. That's how I would operate this offense. Now, it would be a little different. I'm curious your opinion. A lot of people are mocking Jackson Dart here, who obviously is a different style but likes to throw the ball deep too. But that, I think, is still going to be the emphasis, is throwing the football well downfield with Metcalf and Pickens on the outside.
Yeah, Dart I would sort of put in what they've already had there before. Kenny Pickett,
Agreed.
It's like, okay, he's a good, but he's not drafted at the top of the first round as a quarterback, right? So do you go back to that? Or if you're Tomlin, do you just go
take the gamble?
The game's changing, quarterbacks that can move and get out of the pocket and run, and let's play to our defense. Let's not put our court. If it's 3rd and 8, I'm running the ball and punting. And I'm good with that, right? I'm good with that. But I do think that, exactly to your point, DK Metcalf is he going to go up and get some, right? Pickens is going to go up and get some. We only need, if they go get 3 of them during the game and Milroe runs for 3, we beat we're won at least 10 games, right? And we're in the playoffs, and we've got something to build on for the future. I just feel like if you go back to another pocket, it just didn't feel right to me. So I was like, all right, my boys will have some fun with this one. I'm throwing this one in.
No, it's a great theory. And look, he's been invited to Green Bay to go sit in at the draft, so this very well could happen. They don't invite guys unless they think there's a good chance they're going that early.
There's serious reports out there right now that Mike Tomlin loves Jalen Milroe. So
really?
I could see this happening on draft night as well. I want to see those games between Jalen Milroe against Lamar Jackson, or even Steelers game. You're probably calling
that'll be a Sunday nighter at some point. It is every year.
But you think about it, who are you watching? You're watching the teams close to you. You're watching Philadelphia, and you're watching the teams in your division, and you're watching Baltimore run with Lamar Jackson. It's like, I'd like to have one of those.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
All right, let's go to number 22 overall. Los Angeles Chargers, coached by former Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh here at number 22. Chris, what are they doing here?
I wasn't going to go very far without Colston Loveland. I think he's a really special receiver. He understands things about the passing game that I was about in year 6 by the time I figured out some of the things that he knows innately. And I just feel like that, they're always going to be throwing the ball. They're always going to be trying to create space. They really did not have receiving weapons a year ago. And it just feels like that. Let's create a few opportunities in the middle of the field, some easy catch and run kind of plays with a guy who understands, who literally feels like he's playing tight end from the quarterback position. Maybe he played quarterback at some point. I have no idea, but he really has an understanding of exactly, who he is, how to get open. And, that's just what you need right now. They need more ways to score points, and they just didn't have enough last year.
Yeah, and there's been arguments from a lot of scouts on which of these two guys is actually tight end one in this draft. And I think what we have to remember is they're so different. Warren's that Kittle, rugged, kind of blocking and after the catch two-way guy, whereas Loveland, he's the most fluid route runner easily among this tight end group, right? He can line up from any alignment, out wide, slot, in the backfield, in line, wherever you want him to line up from. He is as just special fluid as a route runner. I think it's just so smooth, and obviously the hands are great. Doesn't win a whole lot of contested situations, but I also think Michigan's quarterback situation, especially this year, was not great, and he was really the center of a lot of tight targets in the passing game. But Loveland's a dynamic weapon. I think about him a lot in the same way as TJ Hawkinson, where you can just line up anywhere and route you up. He's a really good football player.
And Herbert is a quarterback that, if you can occupy the middle of the field, right? You've already got Ladd McConkey, and if you can occupy space with a tight end and those two guys, and you dominate in there, and you got the ability to run with Justin Herbert because he's going to take off in key situations, that this is a very different looking team, and Quentin Johnson's still going to be able to give you a little something over the top, but they've got to have another weapon.
And we know how much Jim Harbaugh loves tight ends, and a guy he coached for 2 years and won a national title with, Colston Loveland as well. So he's got the connection to Jim Harbaugh already in Los Angeles. Number 23 overall, Chris, the Green Bay Packers are on the clock here. Probably the most difficult selection Dalton and I always make here. What are they going to do here at 23?
Yeah, how long did you guys think about a receiver? They haven't had one in 30 years or whatever the thing is, and but I just kept watching this Donovan Ezaraku. I just knew I'd mess it up. But I mean, he's a blur. Yeah. I mean, if I had to bet all my money, on one guy beating one guy in a one-on-one matchup, I'm not so sure it wouldn't be him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he's that big. I don't even remember what his size was, but I just kept looking. It's like, I wouldn't want to tackle that guy. I wouldn't want to be on defense and trying to tackle him, and I certainly wouldn't want to be on offense and trying to block him. Now, is he going to be everything that I think he's going to be? I don't know, but I do feel like that if you're looking for just a guy that is going to be a nightmare to block in one-on-one situations, I think he's the one. And there are other guys that are good players down the line a little bit, but I just felt like he was one guy that, I could have easily flipped him with Michael Williams and done that. But I was like, I like this guy. I'm putting him down.
Tell me your favorite connection here.
So I've been making the conspiracy pick here with Ezraku to the Packers because their defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, was his head coach at Boston College before this past season.
Nice. I feel better already about this.
Who in the league is going to know him better than Jeff Hafley and obviously know his talents, and he only got better this past season. Look, 6'2", freakishly long wingspan for 6'2", but elite quickness. And I think for Ezraku, for me, he's a pass rusher. His plan, and when you watch full games in sequence of how he attacks tackles, rep after rep after rep, and the first quote that I kind of had to put in my notes about him, don't let him get hot. Don't let him get hot and get behind by a score where you're in obvious passing situations 8-9 plays in a row, because he's going to get all his a boatload of pass rush moves in sequence, and he's going to kill you. I'm with you. I think Trevor has him number 16 on the big board right now. And look, I keep making that Hafley Ezraku connection with the Packers. If that happens on draft night, I'm throwing the confetti. I'm telling you right now.
That it's a great pick. It really is. But the thing that's impressed me, not only the quickness and what he was able to do, but he had actual pass rush moves going in. He had the Aaron Donald, the doubled, the jump and the chop thing that he used to do. He's tight around the edges. He has a great stab. That one arm stab. You think about it and you go, why doesn't when you go into a guy with two hands? Well, okay, whatever the length is, 33, 34, we make a big deal out of it. But if you turn like this. Now you got like 50-inch arms if you can do it, if you're good at it.
What's funny about that, Larry Fitzgerald used to talk about that with making one-handed catches. He goes, my catch radius is even bigger with one hand than two. It's the same idea you're talking about off the edge here. And again, Ezraku's got a freakishly long wingspan for a guy that's 6'2", and he uses it to his advantage.
It's almost like a perfect build because he has natural leverage at 6'2", but also has long arms too with that. And I'm with you, Chris. I think he has the best pass rush toolbox of any edge defender in this year's draft. Number 24 overall, the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock here. What are they going to do?
I kind of went round and round on the Minnesota Vikings. I've talked to them up there. The one thing that I know they want to do is improve just the defensive tackle position, right? Because they want to be able to blitz and rush from everywhere, and they really didn't do that much of it last year. And I think they if you want to play all those games, you better be able to secure the running game when it's coming directly at you, right? And especially you're playing the Lions all those times, and they're gonna run it until you stop them. So it doesn't matter what kind of tricks and gimmicks and different things that you have going on out there. If you can't stop the run with somebody coming right at you, right? That's tough. They're set up on the outside. Van Ginkel is going to be a good player, or is a good player. Grenard on the other side. So I just felt like. And they feel like, really, that if they had something really good inside, that it would sort of lock in and secure in a lot of different things. And I love Grant. I think he has a chance to be a really good player. And if you can get him singled up on a center, or almost play him some at the nose tackle position, you can't leave your center one-on-one. He's too quick. I mean, he's a big man, but he's quick. He can make some moves, and I just liked him up there.
Underrated athlete at playing at 330, 340. And look, they added pass rushers with Jonathan Allen, with Javon Hargrave, but this is the type of player that's missing. The Vikings, we might see them trade out of this pick because they only have four picks in this draft, but run-stopping defensive tackle for me would be, I'm with you, at the very top of this list. And Grant, you look at as a guy, he's not going to rack up a ton of sacks, not going to rack up a boatload of pass rush production, but could he have that same impact on a team and on his teammates that, say, a DJ Reader does for all those years with the Bengals here and now with the Lions up there? I think Grant could have that sort of impact if you're already stocked with pass rushers around him. Yeah,
I love Kenneth Grant as well. 80-plus grades as a pass rusher and run defender over the last 2 years as well. Number 25 overall, Chris, the Houston Texans are on the clock here. What are they going to do?
Yeah, if the Texans – I really might flip-flop the next two picks, and I feel like that. I know they say they don't need help on their offensive line, but
they do.
They need help on their offensive line. I mean, they got rid of everybody that can play, and they had issues last year. So I was, whether it was Kelvin Banks or Emeka Egbuka, I think is how to say it, is they're both really good players. It could end up being Banks. I went Egbuka just to try and give them a little bit more in the passing game. I thought they got really thin with some injuries this year, and it really hurt them. So that one's a toss-up to me. Could have been either one. So I went Egbuka, but I just looking at it, because I put the Rams getting Banks next, I probably would have gone the other way.
I don't hate it. I mean, after you lose Stephon Diggs, right? Emeka Egbuka played with C.J. Stroud at Ohio State too, so you ran out those guys in Houston. So I don't hate that pick at all. I think Houston still needs receivers after Nico Collins right now.
I have been saying that for as much as everybody's just force feeding an offensive lineman to the Texans, if there's not one that they necessarily like there, they could go receiver, or even if Kenneth Grant were on the board here, a defensive tackle, a run stopper, and an even front. They need that in on their defense too. So I think they have more needs than just offensive line. And if they feel like, okay, we can improve, especially in the interior where I know they traded Tunsil and they have issues at tackle now, but especially in the interior where it was so bad last year especially down the stretch, I don't think you have to force feed them an offensive lineman here if there's not one that fits or there's one that they don't like. Egbuka would be, especially back with C.J. Stroud from the Ohio State days, he would be a great fit in that offense as the Z, the complement to Collins and Kirk.
Absolutely. All right, so number 26 overall, Chris very spoiled it. Kelvin Banks Jr. going to the Los Angeles Rams. Why do you like that fit, Chris?
They're just getting a little bit older, right? Havenstein's been there for a long time. Larry Jackson on the other side. I mean, it's a good team. This team came closest to knocking off Philadelphia in the snow. You think of an LA team, dome team, going to Philadelphia, and they had the ball in their hands in the snow with a chance to win that game and knock the Eagles out of the Super Bowl. Very different looking NFL season if all of a sudden the Rams are the team in the Super Bowl here. So I think they're close. Their defense is built the right way. They've got some great young talent. I mean, Verse and Fisk and those guys, Byron Young, Kobe Turner. I mean, it's really a team that's set up over there. I think the one thing that could knock them out of the box is if they didn't get Matthew Stafford protected in the right way. The older he gets, the more I want to make sure that he's good to go. So Kelvin Banks and it's almost like a luxury pick, but I think it's the right one.
Yeah, and he doesn't necessarily have to start right away. You mentioned Havenstein probably for one more year there at right tackle. You'd probably look at Banks playing right tackle down the line in that scenario with Alaric Jackson signing that. I think it was a 3-year contract extension.
But put Banks at guard, too, if you want.
You sure could. I mean, you can move some things around. You got multiple guys who can play center. So, I mean, it's a play where, look, there's nothing wrong with taking a talented offensive lineman. And you mentioned it with Stafford. There's less improv than ever with him in his game. You need him protected in the pocket.
He's my number one offensive lineman in the draft, Kelvin Banks Jr. I love Kelvin Banks Jr., so I love this pick here at number 26 to Los Angeles Rams. I mean, he was dominant this past year. The Power 4's most valuable tackle, corner PFF wins above average metric. Yeah, Kelvin Banks Jr. would be a phenomenal pick, I think, at 26 to the Rams. Number 27 overall, Baltimore Ravens, Chris, are on the clock. What are they going to
do? I just kept looking at Michael Williams and going, he's fallen way too far, and he feels like a Raven. He's that. You're never going to look at this guy and go, oh, he's not an edge player. He's never going to. He's going to play for 10 years. He's going to beat the crap out of people. He's going to get, whatever number of sacks in a given year. You're never going to go, boy, that was a stupid pick. He could have gone 10 picks higher for me in this draft. And he just felt like when I was like, oh, he's a Raider. I just wrote it down, or not a Raider, a Raven. So, I really liked watching him play. I think he's rock solid. There's some other guys who are sort of those tweeners, that, he's 240 or he's 260, and is he a pass rusher? Is he off the ball? Like, no. Michael Williams is like Mike Vrabel or somebody. You just put him out there, let him pound on people, and you're always going to be glad he's on your team.
It's funny because the conversation even during the season, there were times when there were scouts thinking about Williams as like a top 5 prospect, and we've always looked at the metrics and gone, well, he's not that great a pass rusher to be an Abdul Carter type prospect, but it really now it seems like it's flipped the other way, and I agree with this, where it feels like he's a high floor football player instead, right? He's going to be a fantastic run defender. He's a terrific terrific run defender. If you can get him to the point where he gets you 8 to 10 sacks in multiple seasons, then you're talking about an elite, well-rounded player. But I think the vision on Mykel Williams has to be that is we know what we're getting. We're going to keep trying to develop the pass rush arsenal, but especially in run defense, I mean, there's not many better players in this draft.
That part I agree with. And I know one of the things with Baltimore, man, you better set the edge or they're going to kill you up there. But he's also a guy that I think could kick down inside on third down.
Yeah.
And so you bring on some specialty pass rusher on the edge, and now you get somebody like Williams playing the 3 technique down there. It just feels like it would be, the kind of player they'd like to have.
The versatility helps a lot. He can play from, you mentioned it, anywhere on the defensive line. And Kirby Smart has those guys doing that down there at Georgia.
I mean, the conversation around him is a lot like Trayvon Walker a few years ago, right? With Trayvon Walker, not a great pass rusher at Georgia, but he's a great run defender. He's a freak athlete, too. I think Mykel Williams, I know he didn't really test much at the Combine or Pro Day that much, but he's a freak out athlete as well. It feels like Mykel Williams is a similar type of player to Trayvon Walker. And Trayvon Walker went number 1 overall. Mykel Williams goes to the Ravens here at number 27. The Lions here, Chris, at number 28 overall. What is Detroit going to do here?
I struggled more with Gray Zabel from North Dakota State than I did probably anybody. And I know at the Senior Bowl he had really good one-on-ones down there and some different things. The competition isn't like what you see against some other guys. He's 6'6". Is that too big for a guard? I don't know, because I would definitely be thinking about that for the Detroit Lions right off the bat. But Detroit, like Philadelphia, makes a living off of what they can do up front. And I just think he's the next offensive lineman that would go in there. I think there's a possibility of Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota being the other one. But I would feel good about Zabel in a I don't know where this guy's going to play, but he's going to help me somewhere kind of scenario. And that feels like Detroit-ish to me.
Look, reminds me a lot of Graham Barton from last year,
good
right?
point.
Where it was he was the one guy in last year's draft that I felt like he could play any of the 5 positions. That's where I'm at with Zabel. Could he play tackle? I think would it be an adjustment with maybe a lack of power? I think he weighed in only around 300 or 305 it was. I think he's much more likely to move inside, or maybe eventually he's the center when Frank Ragnow hangs it up, But I think you're right. Detroit, it's probably going to be a trench pick. The question is going to be, is it going to be somebody like Zabel or even a Tyler Booker? Or is it going to be an edge rusher? Because they don't have a whole lot of pass rush depth, right? So that would be the 2 big questions for me. Is it O-line or is it D-line? But either way, it's going to be in the trenches, and Zabel's got that potential, like Barton does, to play anywhere on the line of scrimmage.
Did you have Booker? How much did you like Booker? Alabama guard. He's their captain. Everybody he's God there, right? But man, he missed a lot. I would be worried in protection with him.
The lack of athleticism is clear. I think he's a good pass protector. I think he's got to get in a certain downhill kind of system. The earliest I would start to think about him is 27 to the Ravens, and maybe even 28. I think he could play for Detroit. Otherwise, I think he's more of a second-round guy. That's a guy that you get a solid starter out of in the 40s. But earlier in the offseason, there was talks about him going as high as like number 10 to the Bears. I never really saw that, and I think the lack of athleticism and lateral movement keeps me from that. But I think he's a solid starter. Anywhere from probably 27 to 50, I think, is the range.
Me too.
I could see the Ravens taking him to replace Macari at that left guard spot. That's probably the highest I would see.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't really think it's a great in an outside zone scheme, but in a gap-heavy scheme, he'd be really good. Number 29 overall, the Washington Commanders here. Chris, what are they going to do here?
Well, I mean, you watch that team, and they just need more defense. They really do. They're gonna put points on the board. They're a great young quarterback, and so now they've got to go load up a little bit on defense. I always think of the same team, and it's the Colts back in the day with Peyton Manning, and they would just sit there, and they knew they were going to be in a shootout, so let's just load up with edge rushers, and so we're going to put a lot of our money on offense, but if we have 2 good edge rushers, then we're going to be competitive. And the next guy I had on my board, Mike Green out of Marshall, he had a lot of sacks. What do you have, 17 sacks, something like that, coming out of school. He's athletic. He can run. He makes it this far down in the first round for me because I didn't think he had the kind of wiggle that a really great pass rusher would have, and a lot of times he can get stuffed, and he doesn't have the power really to bull rush and go through anybody. But you can see the athleticism. You can see, he has a passion for the game. The questions I kept writing down were, could he set the edge? Could he take on guards pulling out to kick him out? And I don't know, but he has a little Micah Parsons in there somewhere. And I think as long as they let him play that way, in other words, don't ask him to man up one-on-one. Let him shoot gaps. Let him stunt. Let him play like that. And believe me, they're smart enough in Washington. Dan Quinn knows how to do that. I think he'll be a good player for him.
I think he's got a lot of tools in the box. I have him as edge too. I think if you're going to play down at like that Sun Belt group of 5 level, you got to be dominant. And every time he stepped on the football field, he was the best player. I think the big thing for me would be, you mentioned it, like setting the edge, a lack of length. You can tell shorter arms, tackling, setting the edge. Those are the types of things that'll be a concern. But as far as a pure pass rusher, I think he's got all the tools in the box. I think he could go a lot sooner than this. I know there's some off-field stuff with him that still needs to get figured out. But if you told me he even went as high as 15 to a team like Atlanta, and again, a team and a system that needs those stand-up 2-point edge rushers, Mike Green, I think, is as good as it gets in this draft. And if he got all the way to 29 to Washington, it's a great pick.
Yeah, the only edge rusher in college football with 90-plus grades as a pass rusher and run defender last year. So Mike Green was phenomenal. Great at the Senior Bowl when we were down there in Mobile as well. So I love that pick for Washington, number 29 overall. Number 30 overall, Chris, the Buffalo Bills are on the clock. Just desperately need to add some defensive talent to that team. What are they going to do here?
I just kept fishing for a corner that I felt good enough to put out there. And maybe there is one. Maybe you go and you just say, all right, I'm going to take the kid from Notre Dame. I'm going to get their names
Ben
down.
Morrison, yeah.
Siobhan Revel and Benjamin Morrison, maybe even Trey Amos, back there with some length. Because they don't play a lot of man coverage in Buffalo. Like, you can get away with a guy that's, just willing to hit and come up at Morrison coming off the hip injury and the surgery is, a little, I guess he's going to have a private showcase before the draft comes out. And if he comes out and runs 4.4 or better, I think this whole draft board gets flipped upside down, right? And he would show he was healthy. He could show he's that fast. And because as a man coverage player, he was that good. But at the end, I chickened out. I said, there's just, Ravel has a torn ACL and Morrison has hip surgery, and it was just a little bit too much to overcome. So all right, first round, I know I'm going to get somebody. I'm going to get Pierce. He's a good athlete. He's a guy that is going to create some edge pressure, which we desperately need here. Same issue I have with Green. Is he going to set the edge? Is he going to be that physical guy? But that's the question.
Listen, I have James Pierce Jr. as a top 10 player on my personal big board, so I love this pick. He has the highest pressure rate over the last 2 years of any edge rusher in college football. You mentioned the freak athleticism before. The get-off is unbelievable. I thought he got better as a run defender this past year, that 80-plus run defense grade too. But, yeah, I love this pick for James Pierce Jr. going to the Buffalo Bills. And pairing alongside, Greg Rousseau, Joey Bosa's now there in Buffalo as well. I think it's going to be all of a sudden a pretty exciting edge route for Buffalo.
I'm interested in the Bills' mindset in this draft because it's very clear that their defense is holding them back from winning a championship. They have 2 second-round picks. One of those could go towards a corner, but I do wonder if there's an impact player that they really want, if they would move up from this 30th spot to get somebody. I don't know. Let's say there's teams in the middle that don't feel great about a Will Johnson, and he falls a little bit. I wonder if the Bills, if it was me running the Bills, if I was Brendan Bean, I would be ready to strike and move up from this 30th pick because they need impact players on defense. They have plenty of depth. They have a bunch of decent guys, but I just don't see enough impact star-level players outside of Rousseau. Pierce, if he fell to him, I think could be that guy. I would also be looking to get aggressive and trade up if I'm Buffalo.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, final 2 picks here in Cris Collinsworth's mock draft. The 2 teams that are in the Super Bowl. First up, the loser, the Kansas City Chiefs. And Chris, the big reason why they lost the Super Bowl, offensive line was decimated by the Philadelphia Eagles. So who are they going to go with here?
Well, and the reason they lost both Super Bowls that they lost, both the same thing. They couldn't get it blocked. They just couldn't. And I'll admit, I was very late watching Ariante Ursary. Did I say his name right?
Got it. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. And he was but he was, as soon as I put him on, like I really sort of had my tackles set, and then all of a sudden he jumped like to 4th on my board. I think that he showed the athleticism. We talk about what other guys can do running the football, running 5 flats and whatever. But Ursery ran 5.01 at 6'6" and 331. Long arms, big hands. He was won awards for the best offensive lineman of the country. Remington Pace, I don't even know what that is. That was the award.
I don't think I've heard that either.
There's 100 million awards in college football, so if they're making up new ones, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But I went back and watched. I thought the key game was when they played Penn State, and I went back and watched all the pass rush snaps against Abdul Carter, and I thought he more than held his own. I really did. It was Carter got him one time on kind of a double arm swat down, and But when you look at overall the athleticism of what he could do, the way he handled Carter, the way he sort of was able to go athlete for athlete, and his quickness off the ball, I think, there's some guys that tackles that are 5 yards deep and a second. They're set up and ready to play. They may get beat, but they're not going to get beat because they don't get there. And I just think he has a chance to be a really good one. I think that the draft sets up beautifully for Kansas City unless we just have this unbelievable run on tackles. The one issue they do have is that, let's say that we get here and somebody else wants a tackle and they love Ursery. Mm-hmm. There's going to be Buffalo willing to trade. There's going to be Washington willing to trade because their types of needs are going to still be there in a few picks. Anybody jumping at the last tackle that they like might be jumping to 30 or 29 in this draft.
Yeah, and Ursery is interesting because you can see the power, especially his shoulders. And he's a track and field guy in high school. I think was he a state shot put champion?
Yep.
His shoulders are ridiculously strong when he gets extended. I think the only concern for him really is kind of a lack of bend. There's times when he doesn't sit down as much, and I would be concerned with those speed rushers that can really bend and get underneath him. But there's a lot of tools to work with there. I mean, you talk about athletically. I know you had a chance to talk to him this season, and there's plenty to like about him. It's just going to be, can he handle just those bendier pass rushers? But even, I don't know if you think he's probably too tall to move inside because the Chiefs have that need at left guard also, and they're just trying to bring talent in there. So really talented guy. I think somebody I would probably have in the top 50 or 60. And look, if the Chiefs are feeling like he's their guy at 31 and they need that offensive tackle, whether it's him or Connerly or Simmons or Banks or whoever might drop to him, are we feeling like that's just going to be the most likely option, best offensive lineman on the board for Kansas City?
Yeah, probably, right? And Remington Pace Award, by the way, is the best Big Ten offensive lineman. So he won the best Big Ten offensive lineman.
I knew he won something. I'd never heard of it. There you go.
So Ariate Ursery going to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 31 overall, and the defending Super Bowl champions Philadelphia Eagles rounding out this mock draft number 32 overall. Chris, what do they do here?
Oh, I think maybe I just picked this guy because I wanted to talk about him. I mean, there are only a handful of guys that you go, oh my gosh, and this is always the possibility if somebody trades up for the quarterback position, right? Because they want the first round, they want the extra year, they want all that stuff on the contract. They want 5 years on the contract instead of 4. But if it's just a straight up pick, I could so see Philadelphia taking, is it Nick Emanwari?
Perfect, yeah.
So the safety out of South Carolina, it's like you watch him 6'3", 4.38, 43-inch vertical, like 43. That's like Michael Jordan. 11.6 broad, benches 20. Grew up at the stadium, but I remember at the combine watching. They had a simulcast where they ran Justin Jefferson, George Pickens, and CeeDee Lamb at the same time that Emanwari was running, and he beat them all.
Yeah.
Right. Now, do I think he's the greatest safety in the world? No, but like wide receiver screens and all that, he just blows up wide receivers trying to block him. But it's safety. So much of it is the mental part of the game. You can't give it up deep, and I think sometimes athletically he just thinks he can outrun everybody. But if you get wrong-footed at safety, I don't care who it is. If it's Cris Collinsworth, I can run by. If you make a mistake, I'm going by you, right? So he's got to learn a little bit of how to play that position. But I just feel like that, as far as a lump of clay, you start with something, and these coaches, they all have big egos, It's like, man, you imagine what I can do with this sucker on the back end? I'm going to kill somebody with him.
It's like Shamar Stewart almost a little bit, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's exactly what it is. So I'm going to let him be the Philadelphia pick and just another phenomenal athlete they'll add to their arsenal.
I do like if there was a team in the first round that was going to take Emanwari, I think the Eagles would be one of the better ones because of the way Vic Fangio structures his defense. If Vic Fangio will never ask Emanwari to go back single high. He's never going to do it. They don't do it much anyway, right? You're going to ask him to sit in that corner, that inside quarter, and watch tight ends and slot receivers come up and run support, which he can do it. He can do it in spades for sure at that size. He looks like another linebacker out there, right? And at most play a deep half and don't get beat deep. Look, we see plenty of box safeties. I think about a guy like a Shamari Connor for the Chiefs who plays in this similar role. You mentioned blow up screens, blow up the run, kind of detract those crossers over the middle of the field, like
C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right? Like just
he's
not there anymore,
the straight replacement for Gardner-Johnson. Or you always think about a guy like Cam Chancellor in Seattle who played that role. You wouldn't put him back there single high, but didn't have to. You had Earl Thomas, right? Yeah. So having Reed Blankenship back there and having just the way Vic Fangio's defense is structured could support a player like Emanwari.
Love it. Nick Emanwari, the best box safety, in my opinion, in the draft, going to Philadelphia at number 32 overall, one of the freakiest athletes we've ever seen also at the safety position. That wraps up Cris Collinsworth's mock draft, the one and only Cris Collinsworth mock draft here on PFF. Don't worry, though. Chris will be with us on PFF's live draft show next Thursday night, Chris. You, me, Dalton, and Trevor Sycamore will be live for the first round. I cannot wait for that.
I will actually read, so you can go on my Twitter account or X account. I guess that's about all I have. And you can blow up this draft. I'd actually love to hear the comments. And the one thing I will say is the first question I'm going to ask you guys afterwards is, who did I leave off? Right? Which players belong in the first round discussion that we haven't talked about? Make sure I've seen all the film on these guys. But I'm excited about getting the feedback, getting people's commentary, because a lot of times the local fans know more about this stuff than we do, just from the standpoint they're living it, every day. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, they haven't missed a game in 30 years. They know what's going on there. So it's a fun part of the process. It's a great way for me to learn the players before they get in the league, so I don't have to waste any time on getting ready on Sundays. But it's fun. I love draft weekend. I hope everybody goes on the mock draft simulator and tries it for yourself, and we'll see who's who at the end of it.
I think the big one that everybody's going to wonder about leaving off, and I totally get it, is that 21st pick with the Steelers of Milroe instead of all of the noise we've heard about Jackson Dart lately. Right now, would I necessarily take him in the first round either? I probably wouldn't if I was running a team, but it feels like the momentum is going that way, and there's a lot behind Cam Ward. There's a lot of quarterback suspense to be had and figured out on night one and night two of this draft.
Yeah, if you could get Milroe and not have to play him until year two, I think you have a chance for a real paradigm shift with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And honestly, I think they need one. They haven't cracked the code on offense, and you're eventually going to face one of these teams that are going to put up minimum of 25 points on anybody. And if you want to win a Super Bowl, you got to figure out a way to do it. Either you're going to keep the scores low, which Pittsburgh likes to do, and play defense. And the more I thought about it, it's like, man, how sick are they of hearing about Philadelphia? How sick are they of watching Lamar Jackson over on the other side? And Tomlin, and trying to come up with a way to stop him, somewhere in his brain has gone, I'd like to have one of those. I could do a lot with one of those, and let's see.
Listen, they took Kenny Pickett because they thought he had a high floor, did not work out there. They signed Russell Wilson because they thought he had a high floor, didn't really work out. I guess, going for the ceiling pick here in Jalen Milroe, I don't hate that at all for Pittsburgh.
It's just you watch their offense, and even there was a stretch where they got hot, the deep ball and George Pickens and the moon balls with Russell Wilson, but they just never felt dynamic, right?
No,
and I think that's
not
your
for
point.
A while.
That's your point. They haven't felt dynamic, really. Even the latter days of Big Ben, they haven't felt like a dynamic offense in probably almost a decade, if we're being honest.
And I had not really thought about DK Metcalf to go along with Pickens out there. But you're right. This would turn into, we're going to run it, we're going to have our quarterback run it, and we're going to throw it deep. And we can do that on offense. Yep. We can put up 24 points a game on offense doing that strategy and let our defense have a run at a championship.
Well, let us know in the comments below what you thought of our boss Cris Collinsworth's mock draft. And, of course, we'll be live for the PFF NFL Draft Show next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and even Sunday for an NFL Draft recap show right here on the PFF NFL Show. For our producers back there in Quinn, Tyler, and Eli, for Cris Collinsworth, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys very soon.